Hey everybody, it's Chad Criswell, musicedmagic.com, here to talk to you about something that's kind of been sticking in my head lately. I actually wrote this article about 6 months ago and posted it on Music Ed Magic, but never really thought much about it until recently when I got into a big discussion with a fifth grader of all people of why or why not marching band is a sport. And in doing the research for the article and thinking about it a lot, I think I'll give you the bottom line right off the bat. It depends. And here's the kind of criteria that we're going to go through on this. There's some really good scientific data, some things that you can really look at to help you see one way or the other. But this whole argument is a very personal one for a lot of people. So you're going to kind of have to listen through this, and I'm going to give you all of the different reasons why it's a sport, why it might not be a sport, how it changes depending on where you live, and that kind of stuff. And hopefully by the end you'll be able to make your own decision on it. All right. Now, the criteria that I use to determine whether or not marching band is a sport is going to be the exact same criteria that the dictionary uses. If you go to the dictionary and you look up sport, it tells you that the definition of a sport is an activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or a team competes against another or others for entertainment. Now, if you use that as the basis for the whole is a marching band a sport argument, then we can kind of take that criteria and we can break it down into three parts. Okay, the first part is marching band an activity involving physical exertion? Okay, if you are one of these poo-pooers that say, no, marching band is not a sport, it isn't physical, it isn't hard to do, I ask you to come and watch some of the very competitive marching bands, the high intensity marching bands, both at the high school level and at the college level. Come and watch them perform, and you tell me if they aren't working really hard up at athletic levels. Not only are they working at athletic levels, but they're also trying to play an instrument at the same time. Okay? It's not just running around the field, moving really fast and in very close coordination with dozens of other people right next to them. It's also picking up that instrument and blowing or hitting it, if you're a drummer, in time, in rhythm, coordinated across an entire 100-yard football field. Okay, now that in and of itself means a lot to me because I've been in marching bands all my life. I love it. I love watching Drum Corps International stuff, but there is actually some scientific evidence to kind of go behind this, and there's literature that talks about it. Okay, in 2013 there was a study by a couple of people called named Valley and Leander. By the way, any of these references, if you look at the article on Music Ed Magic, you'll see links to them. You can go check out the resources for yourself. Valley and Leander titled The Effects of Participation in Marching Band on Physical Activity and Physical Fitness in College-Aged Men and Women. Okay, now they used the same kind of measurements that athletic trainers use to measure the physical requirements of an athlete. Okay, while all members of the ensemble exerted themselves, if the performer was a percussionist, the exertion was even more pronounced. As a result of these findings, there's a large growing number of school districts across the country that have begun to actually offer physical education equivalency credits to their marching band members during the marching band season. Okay, so if they're in marching band and they're competing all season long, which usually takes about a semester, give or take, right, or a trimester if you're on a trimester system, then that counts as a PE credit. Okay, I know our marching band here where I live, my son gets up at 6 a.m. every morning during marching band season, goes into school, and they practice from 6:30 until about 9:30. Maybe it's 8:30. Sorry, 6:30 to 8:30, and they get PE credit for it while they're in the season there. Okay, now if that isn't enough right there to tell you that marching band is a physical activity, here's another one that If you don't believe it from me telling you, watch the video. Okay, back in 2005, Drum Corps International produced a video that went along with their ESPN2 broadcast of the DCI World Championships. They don't do those anymore live on TV. Now you got to pay and go to a movie theater in order to watch it. But back then it was great because you could see the DCI World Championships playing on ESPN. They hooked up a band member, in this case a percussionist, because you really couldn't do it to a trumpet player because they've got to blow while they're playing. But they hooked up all of the medical gear to a drummer, and hooked up a face mask that measured his breathing and calories burned and all this kind of stuff. And the guy apparently that was doing the testing wasn't expecting to see what he saw. When they finally ran the data from their performance while this guy was wearing it, it showed that some points during the show, that performer's metabolic rate was up on par with that of a marathon runner. And his heart rate in particular was staying elevated for extended periods of time. All right. At high levels, marching band people get a real workout when they're doing their show. And if you ever watch these drum corps people during the summers, I mean, they're lean, mean, and ready to go because they are working out constantly all day long during the summer practicing for these shows that they do every single night. It's amazing how much work they put out for them. Now, based on those things alone, the written research and then that video that I referenced, by the way, if you want to see the video, go to YouTube. You're already there. And just search for DCI athletes. And it'll probably come up for you, all right? I think it's listed as 2007 on YouTube, but it actually came out in like 2005. So there are other criteria, though, all right? Leave that one alone for a minute. Number 2. Criteria. Does marching band require skill? Okay, this point requires a little bit of discussion, okay, because the bare minimum to be able to play music at the level of high school age marching bands requires at least 4 to 5 years of practice and training just to play the instrument at a decent level, okay? You can't just pick it up and go. It's not something that anybody can do. You have to practice if you're going to get good enough to be able to march around a football field and still play decent, okay? So if you add to this the difficulty of moving all those coordinated movements around the field, marching, 8 to 5 steps laterally with the horns up and at the angle and all this stuff and do a horn pop at the right time of the music, then there is little doubt in my mind that marching band does require skill. 2, all right? So first 2 criteria, done, down. Okay. Number 3 criteria, individuals or teams compete against each other for our entertainment. Okay. Now, while marching band isn't as popular in all areas of the country, and I realize that, okay, but marching band competitions take place in every single state, at some point during the year. Semi-professional organizations like Drum Corps International competitions take place every single night throughout the summer, with bands traveling from city to city all across the country just to participate in those, paying thousands of dollars in some cases in order to be in those programs. Now, in most cases, those performances are judged by professional judges, and awards are given based on their musical performance and the general effect of the show on the field. Now, that's directly comparable to a weekly football game that a football team or a baseball team or any other team might perform in. Okay, so there's the 3rd criteria. Now here's some other ones. Now these don't have to go with that definition of what a sport is, but these are just other things just to kind of put the nail in the coffin and say that, yeah, marching band in most cases should be considered a sport. Marching band has a well-defined and publicly accessible set of rules. Now, those rules vary depending on where you are and what group you're with. If you're just marching in your state marching band contest, the rules might be different than if you're marching Bands of America. But Drum Corps, Bands of America, all of these kind of groups have defined rules. They publish them, and their members are expected to live by them. Okay. Likewise, the schools have the same rules for their marching bands that they have for their athletes. If you get caught drinking alcohol at a party, you're probably going to get banned not only from playing on a football team, but you're going to get banned from playing in the marching band. If your school is doing the rules the right way. Likewise, if your grades fall too far, you can't do marching band anymore. You got to get your grades up before you can do it, just like if you were in a sport. Okay, so why do some people say that marching band isn't a sport? All right, with all of these many validations to the fact that marching band is essentially a sport, why do people disagree? Now, it's not just the people that think that marching band and music in general is stupid. It's also people in the profession, people that are part of it that don't like calling marching band a sport. Okay, it's there's the two schools of thought. There's the people that think that band isn't cool, the people that think that uniforms look stupid, and then you've got, like I said, those other people that the musicians that don't think that marching band should be a sport, but their perspective is more kind of a subtle kind of they have intrinsic motives, let's just say it that way. There are a lot of really good musicians and at all levels that feel like marching band is not really, it's not an art form. All right. Music is supposed to be beautiful. And honestly, guys, while it can be incredibly moving, I mean, watch a DCI drum corps and you'll see it's not Beethoven, playing with the string orchestra and that kind of stuff. It's people moving around a field with very loud brass instruments, woodwinds, drummers banging on them. Okay. But at the same time, some musicians don't like to be lumped in with athletes. Okay. In some cases, a music student feels like they've been persecuted by the jocks for pursuing their musical craft, and this negative connotation in their minds comes back and taints their views. For musicians, sometimes being called an athlete just leaves a sour taste in their mouth. They don't want to be known as an athlete. They want to be known as a professional. They want to be known as a musician. So there's both sides to that coin as well. So, just to kind of conclude and wrap things up here, in most schools that have active competitive marching band programs, no doubt in my mind, marching band is a sport in those communities. But this varies from school to school, from program to program. The individual decision has to be based on what your program does. If it's highly competitive, if it's meeting those criteria that I mentioned before, then yeah, it's a sport and it should be treated like a sport, and the people performing in it should be held to the same rules and responsibilities in their school as any student athlete would. So, I'll leave it up to you, but that's my take on the whole thing. I hope that I've been a little bit enlightening to you. I don't know if I have or not. Hopefully, thank you for sticking around through this whole thing. But if you want more information, go over to Music Ed Magic. The whole article is up on my website. I'll show you a little clip of it here real quick. Where's it at? Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. There it is. Okay, sorry. Hey, there it is. Music Ed Magic, is marching band a sport? Pros, cons, and a reality check. Go over there, take a look at it. While you're there, hey, check out some of my other podcasts. We've got all kinds of other stuff on the page. Always new stuff coming up there every so often whenever I get a chance to do it. Hey, everybody, thank you for sticking around and watching this. Please subscribe to the Music Education Minute on iTunes or on YouTube, and let me know what you think down in the comments. All right, take it easy. Have a good one.